The sun was setting over the green hills of Guanacaste, and the small town of Colorado was settling into its quiet rhythm. The sound of distant roosters mixed with the hum of motorbikes heading home for dinner. Along the dusty road stood a simple white church with a red roof, surrounded by mango trees and bougainvillea that glowed in the evening light. It was a place everyone in town knew well, not because of its size or beauty, but because of the man who served there, Padre Ronald Rojas Gomez. He was not famous. He was not known for giving grand speeches or leading big missions. He was a quiet priest, known more for listening than speaking, for helping more than being seen. People said he never turned away anyone who came to the church, no matter the hour. Sometimes, late at night, neighbors saw a small light coming from inside the church, and they knew it was him still praying alone at the altar. The people loved him because he never asked for attention. He simply showed up for everyone. When a family lost a loved one, he was the first at the door. When the farmers prayed for rain, he prayed with them. He visited the sick, blessed the newborns, and shared food with those who had none. That evening, the air felt calm. Children played soccer in front of the church, while their mothers arranged flowers near the altar. The scent of candles and fresh lilies filled the space. A few elderly women prayed the rosary softly, their fingers moving through the beads as if counting the rhythm of their lives. Inside the small sacristy, Padre Ronald was preparing for the evening mass. He washed his hands slowly, whispering a short prayer, asking God for strength to serve with love. His cassock was clean but slightly worn at the sleeves. A small wooden cross hung around his neck, carved years ago by a local carpenter. He paused for a moment, looking at the crucifix on the wall. There was no sound except the faint rustle of wind through the trees outside. For a brief moment, he closed his eyes and whispered, "Señor, que esta misa sea para tu gloria." Outside, the bell rang 3 times. The echo spread through the valley, calling the faithful. One by one, families entered the church, making the sign of the cross as they dipped their fingers in the holy water. A little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve and asked if he could light a candle for his grandfather. She smiled and nodded. As the pews filled, the choir began a gentle hymn, voices soft and sincere. The notes rose into the open rafters, blending with the warm evening air. The priest stepped out from the sacristy, his face calm, his eyes gentle. He greeted the congregation with a smile that seemed to ease every burden in the room. No one knew that this Mass would be remembered for years to come. To them, it was just another evening, another chance to thank God, another prayer for hope. Yet something about that night felt different. Perhaps it was the way the light filtered through the windows, touching the altar with a golden glow. Or maybe it was the quiet sense of peace that seemed to rest on everyone's hearts. Padre Ronald began the liturgy with his usual calm tone. The people responded together, their voices echoing like one heartbeat. It was simple, ordinary, beautiful, and somewhere deep within that simplicity, something extraordinary was waiting to happen. The Mass continued as it always did. The readings were familiar, the prayers steady, and the rhythm of faith moved like a gentle tide. People had come from nearby farms, small houses, and quiet hillsides. Many carried the weight of the week worries about crops, family illnesses, or bills that couldn't be paid. But for this 1 hour, all of it faded. The Church of Colorado was not grand, but it was alive. The flicker of candles made the painted saints on the walls seem to breathe. The air was warm, filled with incense, and the faint smell of rain drifting from the open door. In the second row sat Doña Teresa, an elderly woman who never missed a single Mass. Her hands were twisted from age, but she still folded them tightly in prayer. Beside her was her granddaughter, a quiet teenage girl named Lucia, who came mostly to please her grandmother. Yet something about this night made her listen more carefully than usual. At the back, a group of young men knelt in silence. They were not always the most faithful ones, but tonight they too felt something pull them toward stillness. Behind the altar, Padre Ronald spoke each word slowly, as though time itself had slowed down with him. His voice was calm, yet strong enough to carry through every corner of the small church. When he lifted the gospel book, the candles behind him shimmered, casting a soft ring of light that surrounded the open pages. He spoke of trust, of remaining faithful, even when life made no sense. God is not far, he said quietly. He walks beside us, even when we do not see him. Lucia felt her heart tighten. She didn't know why, but those words stayed with her. When the homily ended, the church fell silent for a moment before the sound of the offertory hymn began. Families brought forward their gifts: small loaves of bread, fruits from their gardens, a few coins wrapped in cloth. Each offering was simple, but each came from love. In the sacristy doorway, a beam of late sunlight crept in, touching the silver chalice on the altar. The priest looked at it for a moment. It was as if heaven had placed a small reminder before him, a reminder that what was about to happen was more than just ritual. He bowed his head and whispered another prayer. Signor, que tu las nos incuenta aqui. He arranged the paten and chalice, careful and deliberate, as if every movement carried a secret meaning. His hands were steady. His eyes never left the host resting before him. The choir's song faded, and the air grew heavy with stillness. Even the children seemed to sense something sacred approaching. Padre Ronald looked over the congregation one last time, faces familiar to him. People he had baptized, married, and buried. Each one was part of his calling. Each one a reason he had chosen this life of service. He took a slow breath, then turned back toward the altar. Outside, the last trace of daylight slipped behind the mountains. The candles now provided the only light, casting long shadows on the walls. It was time. The bell rang softly 3 times, and everyone knelt. Padre Ronald began the Eucharistic prayer. His voice grew quieter, almost a whisper. The moment that Catholics believe heaven and earth touch was beginning. He raised the host above the chalice, his eyes fixed on it with reverence. No one knew that in the next few moments, something unexplainable would unfold. But for now, the only sound was his voice echoing through the church, calm, faithful, unbroken. And in that calm, the mystery of God began to draw near. He bowed his head, then lifted the consecrated host. The candles flickered, and for a second, the light seemed to tremble with him. Lucia, sitting beside her grandmother, watched closely. She didn't know why, but she felt something stirring deep inside her chest. The sound of her heartbeat filled her ears. Then it happened. A sudden radiance filled the church, not harsh, not blinding, but pure and warm, like sunlight breaking through clouds. The white host in the priest's hands began to shine with a golden glow. For an instant, it was as if the entire altar had become light. Gasps filled the room. People blinked, shielding their eyes. The priest stood frozen, his gaze locked on the host. And as the light grew stronger, something even stranger happened. From where Lucia sat, she could no longer see the priest's hands. The host was suspended in a circle of brightness, surrounded by a light that seemed alive. It wasn't the light of candles or lamps. It pulsed gently, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Doña Teresa whispered, "Dios mío." The choir fell silent. No one moved. Some people began to weep quietly. Others knelt lower, pressing their foreheads to the floor. The glow spread across the faces of the congregation, reflecting in their tears. In that moment, Time seemed to dissolve. There was no sound except the faint rustle of wind and the quiet hum of the light itself. Padre Ronald could feel warmth flowing through his arms, yet he couldn't see them anymore. All he saw was the body of Christ, radiant, weightless, beyond anything his mind could understand. For a heartbeat, he thought his eyes were deceiving him. But the light did not fade. Someone at the back of the church took a photo, not knowing what they were capturing. The flash went off, but it was swallowed by the glow at the altar. Then, slowly, the brightness began to soften. The shape of the priest's hands returned, trembling slightly as he lowered the host back onto the paten. His face was pale, his eyes filled with awe. He whispered a prayer no one could hear. When the light finally faded, silence remained. No one dared speak. Even the youngest children seemed frozen, their eyes wide. It felt as though heaven had touched earth, not in thunder or fire, but in a quiet radiance that reached every heart in the room. Padre Ronald took a long breath and continued the Mass, his voice shaking but steady. Every word carried a new weight, every movement a deeper reverence. When the final blessing was given, the people stayed in their pews, unsure of what to do. They looked at one another, whispering softly, some smiling through tears. Lucia turned to her grandmother. "Abuela, did you see it?" Doña Teresa nodded, unable to speak. Her eyes glistened with tears. Outside, the night was calm. The stars had appeared, but the church still seemed to glow faintly from within. And somewhere in the crowd, the photo that had been taken began to spread, first among friends, then across Facebook, then to thousands of people who would soon be asking the same question. What really happened in that little church in Costa Rica? By the next morning, the small town of Colorado woke to a quiet buzz of disbelief. Word had spread faster than anyone expected. Someone had uploaded the photo from the night before the moment when Padre Ronald lifted the host and the light appeared. The image showed exactly what people had witnessed: a shining circle of gold where the host should be, and no trace of the priest's hands. Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of times, then thousands. The caption read, "El milagro de la Eucharistia. Algo hermoso sucedió anoche en la misa del Padre Ronald Rojas Gómez." People commented from all over Latin America, writing messages of faith, awe, and gratitude. "Dios está presente," one woman wrote, and others simply left prayers and tears in the form of heart and candle emojis. For those who had been there, the photo was more than proof, it was a reminder. It brought them back to that silence, that warmth, that unexplainable peace. At first, Padre Ronald didn't even know the image had gone viral. When a parishioner showed it to him after morning Mass, he stood in silence for a long moment. The brightness on the screen matched exactly what he had seen with his own eyes. He felt both wonder and unease. He said softly, "If this is from God, it's not for me. It's for the people." By the afternoon, Catholic pages across Facebook and Instagram had reposted the story. The group Hablando con Dios wrote about it in detail, calling it a sign of divine presence. Catholic blogs described it as La Luz de Dios en la Eucharistia. Local news picked it up next, filming outside the little church, interviewing parishioners who spoke with trembling voices about what they had seen. "It wasn't just light," one man told a reporter. "It was as if we were being watched by heaven itself." The town that had always been quiet now had visitors arriving from nearby regions, people who wanted to pray, to see the altar, to touch the place where the light had appeared. Some came out of devotion. Others came out of curiosity. The church had never been so full. Every Mass felt charged with a new sense of reverence. People sang louder, prayed longer, stayed after the final blessing just to kneel in silence. But not everyone believed. Some said it was only a reflection from a camera, a trick of light caused by the candles. Others argued that faith didn't need photographs. Padre Ronald said little. When asked by journalists, he simply replied, "God works in silence. What we saw, each person must decide what it means for them." He continued celebrating Mass as always, with the same calm and devotion. But deep down, something inside him had changed. When he raised the host now, he felt a trembling in his heart, not from fear, but from awe. Meanwhile, the online world kept turning. The photo traveled to other countries, translated into different languages. The comments never stopped. One read, "Que alegria tenna, adios en sus manos." Another said, "Gracias, Señor, por recordarnos que no estamos solos." For a few days, that single image united thousands of strangers in prayer. It crossed borders, languages, and doubts. People looked at it and remembered what it felt like to believe in something beyond explanation. And yet, inside the little church of Colorado, life went on quietly. The same candles burned on the same altar. The same people gathered every evening. Only now, when they looked at their priest raising the host, they did so with new eyes that had seen what light can do when heaven chooses to be seen. But behind that light was still a mystery. And in the days that followed, as the excitement spread beyond the town, questions began to surface. Was it truly a miracle, or could there be another explanation? Within a week, the quiet town that once moved at the pace of the wind was filled with questions. People still came to the little church to pray, but their whispers had changed. Some spoke of grace, others of illusion. The air carried both belief and doubt, like two sides of the same mystery. For every person who fell to their knees in gratitude, there was someone who asked for proof. A few visitors arrived with cameras, hoping to capture the same light again. Others brought scientists and photographers, convinced they could explain it as a trick of reflection or motion blur. The parish remained calm through it all. The same candles were lit, the same songs sung, and Padre Ronald continued to celebrate Mass as always. But inside him, something was unsettled. He was not afraid, but deeply humbled. He had seen it with his own eyes. The glow, the warmth, the host shining brighter than anything on earth. He had felt his hands vanish from his sight, as though they no longer belonged to him, but to God. Yet he also knew that true miracles didn't need noise or fame. They needed discernment, patience, and silence. When reporters came asking for interviews, he simply said, "The Mass was as it always is. What happened belongs to the Lord." At the diocesan office in Liberia, word of the event reached the bishop. He requested that everything be handled quietly. No declarations, no conclusions, no public statements until facts were clear. The church, cautious as ever, wanted time to listen, time to pray, and time to understand. A small group of priests and theologians visited the church discreetly. They looked at the altar, the candles, the placement of lights. They inspected the photograph, compared angles, even asked the parishioner who took it to explain exactly where he stood. Some details seemed ordinary. The candles were placed as usual. The lighting was no different from other nights. Yet none of that explained what the people had seen. As one investigator put it, even if a camera can make light appear where it should not, it cannot make hundreds of hearts change at once. That was the real question, now not how the light appeared, but what it awakened. Faith had deepened in the town. People who had not been to confession in years returned. Old neighbors who had not spoken began forgiving each other. Young people who once laughed at religion now knelt in silence. Lucia, The teenage girl who had seen it happen beside her grandmother found herself coming to Mass alone after school. She didn't fully understand what she had seen, but she couldn't forget it either. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that warm glow surrounding the host. It made her want to pray, even when she didn't know what words to use. Her grandmother smiled one evening and said, "You don't need to understand a miracle, Hija. You just need to let it change you." In the midst of all this, Padre Ronald carried on quietly. He never claimed to have performed a miracle. In his heart, he believed it wasn't about him at all. At night, when the church was empty, he often sat in the front pew, looking at the altar where it happened. He would whisper, "Señor, if this light was from you, let it guide people closer to you, not to me." He knew faith wasn't built on what the eyes could see, but on what the soul could feel. The image had stirred hearts across the world, but the deeper miracle was happening quietly in every person who decided to believe again, to forgive again, to return to God again. Still, the question remained for many. Was the light they saw a sign from heaven? Or was it heaven's way of reminding them that belief itself is the greatest miracle of all? Weeks passed, and the noise of social media began to fade. The photo that once filled every feed was now buried under new stories, new trends, and new distractions. But in Colorado, something lasting remained. The miracle, or whatever one wished to call it, had changed the town. Every evening, long before Mass began, the pews filled with people who once stayed home. The church bells, once heard by few, now echoed across the valley like a familiar song. Farmers arrived still covered in dust. Children ran ahead of their parents to light candles, and even those who didn't believe came, just to sit in the stillness. The atmosphere inside the church was different now. It wasn't excitement. It was peace, a deep, steady peace that seemed to rest in the walls, in the air, in the hearts of those who prayed. Padre Ronald noticed it too. He could feel it each time he stepped toward the altar. His steps were slower, his words more deliberate. Every Mass felt like a whisper between heaven and earth. He often thought back to that night, trying to understand what God wanted him to see. For days afterward, he had searched for meaning, asking why it happened and why to him. But the answer never came, and slowly he realized it didn't need to. One evening, as he prepared for Mass, Lucia approached him. She carried a small notebook and looked nervous. "Padre," she said softly, "I've been writing since that night, about what I saw, about how it changed me." He smiled. "And what have you learned?" She looked down for a moment, then said, "That faith isn't something you wait to see. It's something you choose, even when nothing happens." The priest nodded. "That's the truest kind of miracle, Hija." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The first drops of rain began to fall against the church roof, but no one left. The candles flickered in the dim light as the Mass began. During the consecration, Padre Ronald lifted the host again. This time, there was no blinding glow, no vanished hands, no visible sign at all. Yet somehow, the silence felt fuller. He could sense every heart in the room reaching toward the same mystery. When he looked at the host, it was enough. It didn't need to shine to be real. It already was the light, the quiet, hidden light of Christ that had always been there. After Mass, people stayed behind as usual. Some prayed in silence, others helped clean. Doña Teresa sat in her usual pew, eyes closed, lips moving softly in prayer. Her granddaughter knelt beside her, tears running down her cheeks, not of fear or confusion, but of gratitude. The miracle had passed, but its echo lived on. In the months that followed, small things began to happen, not flashes of light, but moments of grace. A man who had stopped speaking to his brother for 20 years finally made peace. A woman healed from the bitterness that had weighed her down since her husband's death. Teenagers began volunteering at the parish, repainting the old church walls and visiting the sick. No one called these things miracles, but everyone knew they were. And in the middle of it all, Padre Ronald remained the same humble priest he had always been. He didn't chase the attention, didn't give interviews, didn't claim anything. He simply kept serving, day after day, mass after mass. One evening, as he locked the church after confession, he looked toward the altar and whispered, "If your light ever returns, let it be within them. Not in the air, not in the photograph, but in their hearts." He smiled to himself, hearing only the soft patter of rain outside. In that quiet moment, he understood what he had missed all along, that the true miracle was not what appeared on camera, but what stayed unseen. The renewed faith of a small town, the peace that lingered in their hearts, and the love that had returned where it once was lost. And that light no photograph could ever capture it. Months passed, and life in Colorado returned to its quiet rhythm. The hills turned green again after the rainy season, and the sound of roosters once more filled the morning air. Yet for those who had been inside the church that night, nothing was ever truly the same. The miracle, whether seen by eyes or felt by hearts, had left a mark that time could not erase. The people no longer spoke of it every day, but they lived differently because of it. Faith had become something real, something alive. Lucia now helped in the parish choir. Her voice, once shy, now carried through the church like a quiet offering. She had stopped trying to explain what she saw that night. Instead, she learned to pray with a calm she had never known before. Doña Teresa passed away peacefully one morning, her rosary still in her hands. At her funeral, Padre Ronald spoke gently, saying, "She prayed to see the light of God her whole life. I believe she finally does." The photo that had started it all was now framed in the back of the church. It wasn't displayed as proof, but as a memory, a reminder of a night when heaven's mystery became visible for just a few seconds. People looked at it quietly, not searching for signs, but remembering what faith had felt like when the air itself seemed to breathe with the presence of God. Padre Ronald often sat beneath that photo in the evenings after everyone had gone. The candles flickered, their light dancing across the wooden pews. Sometimes he would close his eyes and hear again the soft gasp of the people, the silence that had followed, the warmth that had filled the church. He had come to understand something that words could never fully capture. Miracles were not moments meant to be analyzed. They were invitations, calls to return to the simple truth that God was still here, still present, still speaking in ways the world often overlooked. He whispered once more the prayer he had said that night before the Mass began. "Señor, que esta misa sea para tu gloria." Outside, the stars shone over the valley. The air smelled of wet earth and jasmine. The same quiet peace filled the small town, the kind that doesn't draw attention but never leaves. The photo might fade one day. The story might be forgotten by the world. But in that little corner of Costa Rica, people would always remember how light once came down upon a humble altar, not to prove anything but to remind them that even the smallest faith can open the door to heaven. And perhaps that was the greatest miracle of all.